welcome to the show. It's the Money and Markets show. And again, we'd like to welcome you into the new year, 2025. And of course, in times like this, as we begin the year, there are many aspirations that we put forward as a people. Of course, some are socially based, others are economically based. Now, talking about economics, of course, many of us want to tick quite a number of boxes at household level. But Uganda as a country has also set itself a very aggressive target, of course, beginning this year and eclipsing in the year 2040. This is building or pushing Uganda's GDP, that's gross domestic products. In other words, the total sum of goods and services produced in the country from the current $50 billion to $500 billion by the year 2040. Now, it's counting on a number of things, including new technologies, innovations, but then also critical sectors such as agriculture or agribusiness in general. And indeed, this seems to be pointing in the right direction, at least going by the rally in prices of key commodities, that's coffee and cocoa. Because over the past 3 years, we've seen the prices of the two beverages almost tripling. And this seems to be continuing even as we enter 2025. Now, we'll be revisiting that story in our subsequent stories. It is Money and Markets. Welcome to the show. There's no doubt that last year, that is 2024, was a tough year for business. Now, the situation seems not to be any better as we enter 2025. Now, in times like this, viable businesses and competitive businesses are the ones that can stay in the game. Now, the question is, what do you need to stay competitive? And at a national level, what can Uganda do to make its business and business people competitive in a market space where all neighbors are trying to grab a piece of the pie of business?
Our companies, our businesses are not prepared or not ready to service the addressable demand. So one of the things that the country needs to pay strict attention to is the provision of technical assistance. Technical assistance to our companies, that we must be deliberate to work with our companies in areas like management, governance, accounting, even technical space. That if I am a small company and I'm venturing into manufacturing, which equipment, which technology do I need to have? Somebody needs to educate me, train me, support me to understand the needed technology, to appreciate where I can source that technology and how to access the technology. But internally, I must build internal capacity for my staff, my systems, the systems are in place, the discipline that is the financial discipline that is needed, so financial management skills are needed, and then externally, we need to be supported to access or venture into these new markets. For example, it could be that we can organize trade missions to these markets, but trade missions that are taking well-prepared companies. Not saying we can take you to China, but you just pick villagers, they go to China who are not prepared, who don't know what to do. And then they go to China, they have nothing to do there, they don't know how to pitch, their products are not well arranged. So that kind of support, but it costs a lot of money. It costs money, and therefore it requires a combined effort by both the public sector, government investing, and the private sector, our companies, our banks, our big companies, to invest in building the capacity of Ugandan businesses to compete. Because our competitors elsewhere are supporting their companies. The South Africans are supporting their companies to take over Africa. The Chinese are supporting their companies to take over Africa. The Europe is doing the same, but we are not doing much in terms of building the capacity of our SMEs. What is emerging is that when the company is smaller, it will thrive. When it starts expanding and growing, chances that are that it will burst, it will fail to pay its taxes, it will fail to service its loans, and eventually we have been reading in the papers every now and then that so and so the assets are being taken over by the bank. So as our companies become bigger, ownership of by Ugandans of these big big companies start reducing. And unless we own and control capital as Ugandans, it will be very difficult for us to tap into those opportunities. So as a country, we must have an ecosystem that supports Ugandans to own and control capital. So with that capital, they are able now to service their growth strategies.
Now, going back to cocoa and coffee, very important beverage commodities around the world. We've seen, according to the World Bank Beverage Report, a jump in the index for the beverage commodities generally, of course driven by the price rally in prices of cocoa and coffee by about 20%. Now, for Ugandan farmers, this has created excitement because, of course, the prices have been good over the past 2-3 years. And, of course, we've seen this peak in the year 2024. For cocoa specifically, we saw prices touching highs of about 37,000 a kilogram. And this, to put it in context, actually means that a 100-kilogram bag of cocoa seeds, well done and dried, would easily go for about 3.5 million Uganda shillings. Now, that's quite some good money. Now, for those in the coffee subsector, again, good news because the prices have also been good. Now, there are factors responsible for this rally, and most of these factors are actually related to the bad conditions, both weather and other elements in the major producing countries of these commodities. Now, starting with Brazil, the country has been contending with tough weather conditions, long droughts that affected production capacity and yields of the major farms down there. And of course, this has given Uganda an edge in this space, at least going by the prices for the beans. And this is partly because Uganda today is among the leading producers, if not the leading producer of coffee on the African continent. Of course, the good news is that more Ugandans, more people are now going into the production of these two crops, especially coffee. And this is partly because of the prices, but then also the supportive good soils and weather conditions for the production of the crop. Now, going to cocoa, again, the major producers of this crop, African-based, of course, countries, that is Ivory Coast and Cote d'Ivoire, have also been going through a fairly rough patch of weather that has also affected, their production and, of course, affecting the supply of beans, cocoa beans, into the global market space. Now, many have attributed this to one, weather, like I said, but then also the low supply of fertilizers, that were needed for the production of these two crops, because a lot of these fertilizers were coming out of Ukraine. And as you know, the Russia-Ukrainian war has affected, that supply. Now, the other element is that most of the trees in these two markets are becoming of age, and the replacement hasn't been so good. Now, these all combined have given Uganda a very good platform to actually make money on the cocoa side. Now, the key thing and the key learnings that experts are pointing at here is that Uganda needs to put its act together so that it leverages the advantages, the comparative and competitive advantages it has over other players. Like, for instance, the good soils that allow most coffee farmers in Uganda to produce without applying a lot of fertilizers and other additives, to actually be able to compete when the ground is leveled, when, in other words, these major suppliers have no calamities befalling them like it is at the moment. So, again, this has to be supported at another level, again, according to experts, by good policies, both at the level of government, but then also globally, being able to negotiate good trading terms with major importing partners for the commodities, importing countries for coffee and cocoa.